The first message arrived on a Tuesday morning, just as Mai was tying her apron for the breakfast shift. "I'm a delivery driver," it read, "but at night, I write poetry that nobody's ever heard." Attached was a photo of notebook pages filled with carefully crafted verses written during lunch breaks between deliveries. More messages followed, each one a confession of hidden talent. A gas station attendant shared photos of incredible pencil sketches drawn on receipt paper during quiet night shifts. A grocery store clerk sent recordings of her singing while stocking shelves after hours. A school janitor revealed his secret passion for designing clothes, showing pictures of stunning outfits created from recycled materials. The Golden Cup became their gathering place. It started small, just a few people meeting after May's shift, sharing their art in whispered conversations over cold coffee and leftover pie. The dusty piano that had started it all stood witness to their dreams, no longer silent but singing again with their collective hope. One evening, a young man named Raj, who worked as a dishwasher at a fancy restaurant downtown, brought his violin. His fingers were rough from hot water and harsh soaps, but when he played, the whole diner fell silent. His music spoke of long nights scrubbing pots while composing symphonies in his head, of dreams deferred but never abandoned. An overnight security guard named Luna showed up with her sketchbook full of comic strips drawn during quiet shifts, stories about everyday heroes working ordinary jobs. Her characters looked like people you'd pass on the street, tired but determined, carrying their art like secret treasures. They called themselves the Hidden Stars, these artists in uniforms. They shared not just their art, but their stories too. Some had given up formal training to support families. Others never had the chance to study their craft in the first place. But all of them had kept their passions alive, finding moments to create between shifts and responsibilities. The movement spread through word of mouth and social media. In diners and cafes across the city, more groups began to form. A barbershop became an after-hours gallery for a hairdresser's photography. A laundromat hosted poetry readings between spin cycles. A convenience store clerk turned the security camera footage into stunning time-lapse art. Mai watched it all unfold with a mixture of joy and disbelief. Her viral piano moment had unlocked something. A recognition that art doesn't belong only in galleries and concert halls. It lives in the hearts of people who serve your coffee, deliver your packages, and clean your offices. The local news caught wind of the movement. They came to film a segment about the Hidden Stars, capturing Luna teaching art to fellow security guards during break time, and Raj giving violin lessons to a group of restaurant workers before their shifts. The reporter asked May what made these artists special. "We're not special," she answered, wiping down tables as she spoke. "We're everywhere. We've always been here, creating beauty between customer orders and time cards." The movement wasn't just about showcasing talent. It was about dignity. About recognizing that a person's job title doesn't define their worth or their abilities. Every night, the Hidden Stars proved that creativity doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It blooms wherever it's planted, even in the cracks of a busy workday. Parents started bringing their children to these gatherings, showing them that dreams don't have to die when reality calls. "Look," they'd say, "that's your bus driver playing jazz guitar. Remember that next time you think you have to choose between your art and your living." The Golden Cup's owner, moved by it all, finally had the piano tuned. He even installed better lighting in the corner where they gathered. "This place has always been more than just a diner," he said one evening, watching May teach a young waitress from across town how to play a simple melody. Now it's finally living up to its potential. As summer turned to fall, the Hidden Stars movement had grown beyond anything May could have imagined. But its heart remained in that corner of the Golden Cup, where a dusty old piano had reminded everyone that talent doesn't disappear just because it's hidden. Sometimes it just waits for the right moment to shine. The aroma of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the morning air at Sunshine Diner, where Mai had spent the last 3 years of her life memorizing regular customers' orders and perfecting the art of balancing 5 plates at once. Her weathered sneakers squeaked against the checkered floor as she moved between tables, her order pad stuffed with scribbled notes and, hidden beneath them, precious scraps of paper filled with lyrics she'd written during quiet moments. The regulars knew her as the quiet girl with a gentle smile who somehow remembered exactly how they liked their eggs and that Mr. Chen from Table 6 needed his toast extra crispy. What they didn't know was that every quiet hum as she refilled their coffee cups was a piece of an original song, born from late-night inspirations and early morning dreams. "Order up," called out Uncle Joe from the kitchen window, his voice cutting through the breakfast rush chatter. May quickly tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and grabbed the plates. The weight of the dishes had become second nature to her now, just like the weight of supporting her younger brother through college with every tip she earned. Between serving plates of steaming pancakes and scrambled eggs, she would catch glimpses of herself in the diner's windows, still wearing her grandmother's jade pendant for luck. Her grandmother had been the one who taught her to sing, sharing old folk songs while they cooked together in their tiny kitchen. "Music feeds the soul," she used to say, "even when the wallet is empty." The morning regulars started trickling out as the lunch crowd began to appear. Mai wiped down tables with practiced efficiency, softly singing under her breath. The lyrics were her own this time, a song about chasing dreams while carrying other people's plates, about finding beauty in the ordinary moments between coffee refills and goodbye waves. Her notebook, hidden in her apron pocket, was filled with similar stories. Songs about the elderly couple who came in every Sunday, still holding hands after 50 years. About the young student who studied for his medical exams until closing time, surviving on endless cups of coffee. About the single mom who brought her kids in for special birthday breakfasts, counting pennies but never skimping on their joy. Behind the counter, while brewing fresh pots of coffee, Mai would practice harmonies in whispers. The steady drip of the coffee maker became her metronome, the clink of dishes her percussion. Even the bell of the door played its part in her daily symphony, announcing new characters in her growing collection of songs. Her coworkers had gotten used to her humming, some even joining in when they recognized a popular tune. Little did they know that the songs stuck in their heads were actually Mi's originals, pieces of her heart served up between plates of comfort food. The diner's owner, a kind-hearted woman everyone called Mama Rose, never minded the singing. It adds something special to the place, she'd say with a knowing smile. Sometimes, during slow afternoons, she'd encourage me to sing a little louder, especially when she noticed someone having a rough day. It was amazing how often a gentle melody could turn a frown into a slight smile. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the wide windows, Meg counted her tips while humming her newest song. Written just last night, it was about finding starlight in fluorescent spaces and magic in mundane moments. Her fingers, smelling of coffee and dish soap, drummed quietly against the counter as she worked out the bridge of the song in her head. The door chimed again, and Mai quickly tucked her notebook away, ready to greet another customer with her usual warm smile. She didn't know it yet, but this ordinary Tuesday was about to become the first chapter of an extraordinary story, one that would change everything, not just for her, but for everyone who had become part of her diner family. The Tuesday evening shift at Sunshine Diner was quieter than usual. The rain outside had scared away most customers, leaving only the soft patter of droplets against windows and the gentle hum of the overhead lights. Mai found herself alone except for Uncle Joe in the kitchen, who was busy organizing tomorrow's deliveries. These quiet moments were usually her favorite time to let her voice float a little louder than whispers. The empty diner became her practice room, each table her audience, and the rain outside her backup percussion. She pulled out her notebook, dog-eared and coffee-stained, and began singing a song she'd written about her grandmother's journey to America. The melody carried stories of courage and hope, blending traditional tunes with modern rhythms. Her voice filled the empty spaces between booths, dancing with the shadows cast by street lights through rain-streaked windows. Even Uncle Joe had stopped rattling pans in the kitchen to listen. What May didn't notice was the figure sitting quietly in the corner booth, partially hidden by the hanging plant Mama Rose had recently added to brighten up the place. Mr. Wong, a regular who usually came in for morning coffee, had taken shelter from the rain and found himself witness to something unexpected. Unlike other times when Mai would quickly silence her songs at the sight of customers, she remained lost in her music, eyes closed as she wiped tables in rhythm with her melody. Mr. Wong sat perfectly still, not wanting to break the spell. His cold cup of green tea forgotten, he carefully reached for his phone. As a retired music teacher who now produced indie artists in his small home studio, he recognized something special in the way Mi's voice carried both strength and vulnerability. The song spoke of universal experiences, leaving home, chasing dreams, and keeping traditions alive in a new world. It was the kind of authenticity he hadn't heard in years of working with young artists. The recording light blinked silently on his phone as Mai moved through her song, adding little improvisations here and there. Her voice cracked slightly on a high note, but instead of stopping, she smiled and kept going, turning the imperfection into something beautifully human. Uncle Joe peeked through the kitchen window, nodding along with a knowing smile. He'd been hearing Mi's songs develop over the years, watching her confidence grow with each quiet performance to an empty diner. Tonight, though, felt different, as if the universe had finally decided to listen. When the last note faded into the sound of rain, Mr. Wong found himself wiping away tears. He'd come in to escape the weather, but had stumbled upon something precious, a reminder of why he fell in love with music in the first place. The spell broke when Mai turned and finally noticed him. Her cheeks flushed red as she quickly tucked her notebook away. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there. Can I get you a fresh cup of tea?" Mr. Wong smiled warmly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "The tea can wait," he said softly. "Would you mind sitting down for a moment? I have something I'd like to share with you." Mai hesitated, looking around the empty diner. Uncle Joe appeared in the kitchen window and waved her on with an encouraging nod. "Go on, I'll watch the front." As Mai slid into the booth across from Mr. Wong, she had no idea that this rainy Tuesday evening would become the beginning of something extraordinary. Sometimes the biggest changes come in the quietest moments, wrapped in the simple magic of an empty diner and a song meant for no one but the rain. Steam rose from the fresh cup of tea Mai had brought over before sitting down. Mr. Wong carefully placed his phone on the table between them, his hands slightly shaking with excitement. "Before I show you something, I want you to know that I've been coming to this diner for 5 years, and I've never heard anything quite like your voice." Mi's fingers nervously played with her grandmother's jade pendant as she listened. The rain continued its gentle rhythm against the windows, creating a cozy atmosphere in the nearly empty diner. Uncle Joe pretended to be busy cleaning the grill, but his ears were clearly tuned to their conversation. "I'm just a waitress who likes to sing," Mai said softly, her eyes fixed on her reflection in the surface of the tea. But Mr. Wong shook his head, his kind eyes twinkling under the diner's fluorescent lights. "That's like saying Van Gogh was just a man who liked to paint." He chuckled, then pressed play on his phone. Mi's voice filled the space between them, clear and pure, singing about her grandmother's journey. Hearing herself, she felt a mix of embarrassment and surprise. Did she really sound like that? "I used to teach music at the community college," Mr. Wong explained. "Now I run a small recording studio from my home. Nothing fancy, just a converted garage with some good equipment. I work with independent artists who have something real to say." He paused, watching Mi's reaction carefully. "Artists like you." The moment felt surreal. Through the diner windows, Mai could see the streetlights creating halos in the rain, just like in her childhood dreams of performing on stage. But reality quickly crept back in. "I have bills to pay," she said quietly. "My brother's college tuition." Mr. Wong nodded understandingly. "I'm not offering false promises of instant fame. What I'm offering is a chance to record your songs properly, to share your stories with people who need to hear them. We can work around your schedule, evenings, weekends, whatever works for you. He pulled out a worn business card from his wallet. The text was simple: Golden Bridge Studios, where stories become songs. Below it, a phone number and email address. I've seen too many talented people let their dreams slip away, he said, sliding the card across the table. Sometimes we need a little push from the universe. Uncle Joe appeared with 2 slices of apple pie on the house. Your singing makes the food taste better, he grinned, giving Maya a gentle pat on the shoulder. Even the grumpiest customers smile when you hum. May picked up the business card, running her fingers over the embossed letters. Her mind raced with possibilities and fears. What if it was a scam? What if she wasn't good enough? What if she was walking away from a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Tell you what, Mr. Wong said, sensing her hesitation. Come visit the studio first. Bring someone you trust. See the setup. Meet some of the other artists I work with. No pressure, no contracts, just a conversation about possibilities. The door chime rang as a couple rushed in from the rain, shaking off their umbrellas. Mai stood up, tucking the card into her notebook. I need to think about it, she said honestly. Mr. Wong smiled warmly. Of course. Music is like tea. It shouldn't be rushed. It needs time to steep properly. He took a sip from his cup. But don't let fear steep too long, or it becomes bitter. As Mai walked toward the new customers, notebook pressed close to her heart. She felt something shift inside her. The familiar weight of her order pad seemed lighter somehow, as if the universe had decided to help carry her dreams for a while. That night, after her shift, she sat in her small apartment and played Mr. Wong's recording again. Her brother was already asleep in the next room, his textbook spread across his desk. Looking at his peaceful face, May realized that sometimes taking a chance isn't just about following your own dreams. It's about showing others that their dreams are possible too. Morning sunlight streamed through the tiny window of May's apartment as she counted her savings for the 3rd time. Bills were spread across her small kitchen table like a paper puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Her brother's next tuition payment was due in 2 weeks, and the refrigerator had started making strange noises that worried her. Taking time off work to record seemed impossible. Yet Mr. Wong's business card sat on her table, catching the light, seeming to whisper possibilities. She checked online reviews of Golden Bridge Studios, asked around at local music shops, and even visited the address just to make sure it existed. Everything pointed to it being legitimate. You should do it, her brother said, appearing in the kitchen doorway still in his pajamas, hair messy from sleep. He'd overheard her playing the diner, recording countless times over the past week. I can pick up some tutoring jobs to help with expenses. Mai looked up at him, worry creasing her forehead. Your studies are more important. Mom and Dad sent you here to become a doctor, not to support your big sister's singing dreams. He sat down across from her, pushing aside some bills to make space for his cereal bowl. They sent us here for a better life, he corrected. Maybe this is part of it. Besides, he grinned, when you're famous, I'll tell everyone I was your first fan. At work that day, Mi's hands trembled as she handed Mama Rose her request for a week off. The diner owner read the note carefully, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. The breakfast rush swirled around them, clinking plates, sizzling griddles, and the constant chatter of customers. About time, Mama Rose said finally, surprising May. Uncle Joe told me about Mr. Wong's offer. That man's been coming here for years, always polite, always tips well, and knows more about music than anyone I've met. She stamped the time-off request with approval. Just promise you'll still sing for us sometimes. The regulars noticed something was different about May that day. She moved between tables with an extra spring in her step, her quiet humming a little more confident. Mr. Chen from Table 6 even caught her doing a small dance while refilling the coffee pot. During her break, Mi called the number on Mr. Wong's card. Her hands were shaking so much she had to dial twice. They arranged for her to visit the studio that weekend, and he encouraged her to bring her brother along. That evening, as she wiped down tables, each regular customer felt like family. There was the old couple who shared crossword puzzles over breakfast, the night shift nurse who always ordered chamomile tea, the college students who studied until closing time. Their stories had found their way into her songs, their daily lives becoming verses and choruses in her notebook. Back home, Mai pulled out her grandmother's old recipe box. Hidden beneath handwritten recipes for dumplings and herbal soups was her small stash of emergency money. Savings she'd put aside for real emergencies. Was following a dream emergency. Her grandmother's voice seemed to whisper from the jade pendant. Sometimes the heart has emergencies too. She stayed up late that night, rewriting her songs in a fresh notebook. Her brother fell asleep on the couch beside her, his medical textbooks creating a makeshift pillow. The city lights twinkled outside their window like an audience of stars, waiting. In the quiet hours before dawn, Maid made peace with her decision. Sometimes the biggest risks look like small moments. A business card on a table, a checked box on a time-off request, a decision to believe in something bigger than tips and coffee refills. As she finally crawled into bed, the first hints of sunrise painting the sky, she remembered something her grandmother used to say. The bird doesn't ask permission to sing. It simply opens its heart, and the song comes out. Maybe it was time for her to be as brave as those morning birds, whose songs she heard every day on her walk to work. The morning sun cast long shadows as Mi and her brother stood outside Mr. Wong's home studio. It wasn't what she had imagined, just a converted garage in a quiet neighborhood, with a small garden of chrysanthemums leading to the door. Her brother squeezed her hand reassuringly as she pressed the doorbell. Mr. Wong greeted them wearing a faded concert t-shirt and a warm smile. The studio inside was a cozy space where modern technology met homey comfort. Sound-absorbing panels covered the walls, their dark gray fabric softening the room's edges. A worn leather couch sat against one wall, and potted plants brought life to every corner. It's not exactly Hollywood, Mr. Wong chuckled, noticing Mi's wide-eyed exploration of the space. But magic isn't about the place. It's about what happens inside it. He gestured to the various instruments carefully arranged around the room. An old upright piano, several guitars hanging on the wall, and a microphone setup that looked both professional and inviting. A young woman was packing up her guitar as they entered. Perfect timing, Mr. Wong said. This is Little Cloud. She just finished recording her EP. The singer smiled warmly at Mai. Mr. Wong helped me find my sound when all I had were covers and confusion, she said, strumming a quiet chord. Trust his ears. They hear the truth in music. After Little Cloud left, Mr. Wong showed them his equipment. Mi's brother, ever the technical mind, asked questions about sampling rates and acoustic treatment. But Mai found herself drawn to the piano. Her fingers ghosted over the keys, not quite touching them. Go ahead, Mr. Wong encouraged. Every instrument here has a story. That piano came from a closed-down jazz club. It's been part of more dreams than I can count. Mai sat down, her waitress uniform feeling out of place among the instruments. But when her fingers found the keys, something clicked into place. She began playing one of her grandmother's folk songs, the one about moonlight on river waters. Her voice joined the piano naturally, as if they'd been waiting for each other. The sound was different here, fuller, clearer. The studio's careful acoustics wrapped around her voice like a warm blanket. When she finished, she noticed her brother wiping his eyes quickly. That's the song Mom used to sing, he whispered. Mr. Wong had been recording. He played it back, and Mai barely recognized her own voice. It sounded both familiar and new, like seeing your reflection in still water instead of a mirror. That's just a rough take, he said. Imagine what we could do with proper preparation and time. They spent the next hour testing different microphones, playing with arrangements. Mr. Wong showed her how small changes in position could affect the sound, how technology could enhance but never replace the human element of a performance. The best recordings, he explained, capture not just the voice, but the soul behind it. Before they left, Mr. Wong shared some recordings of other artists he'd worked with. A retired teacher who wrote children's songs, a night security guard whose blues songs told stories of city dawns, a young mother whose lullabies had found an audience online. None of them were famous, but all of their music carried that same honest quality Mai strived for. "We can start next week," Mr. Wong said, handing her a simple contract to review. 2 songs to begin with. No pressure, no rush. Music is like cooking. You can't hurry the important parts. On the bus ride home, Mai and her brother sat in comfortable silence. The contract sat in her bag, next to her notebook of songs. The city rolled past the windows, and every scene looked like a potential lyric. The old man walking his dog, the children playing basketball, the street vendor selling flowers. "You know what this reminded me of?" Her brother said finally. "Remember when we first came to this country, and you taught me English through songs? You made up little tunes about everything. The grocery store, the subway map, my math homework. Maybe that's why I'm good at memorizing medical terms now." Mai smiled, touching her grandmother's jade pendant. Sometimes the biggest dreams don't look like spotlights and stadiums. Sometimes they look like a converted garage filled with second-hand instruments and first-hand hopes, where ordinary stories become extraordinary songs. Recording her songs had been one thing, but nothing prepared Mai for what happened next. She was serving the morning rush at the diner, balancing plates of pancakes and refilling coffee cups, when her brother burst through the door, nearly tripping over his own feet. "You need to see this," he exclaimed, holding up his phone. Mai quickly delivered her plates to table 3 before huddling with him near the counter. The video Mr. Wong had posted of her singing her grandmother's folk song, mixed with her own lyrics about chasing dreams in a new land, had somehow caught fire online. The numbers were climbing by the minute. Comments poured in from around the world, people sharing their own stories of leaving home, of working hard, of keeping their culture alive through music. Some wrote about watching it with their parents, others about crying in their cars during lunch breaks. Uncle Joe peered over their shoulders, his usual stoic expression breaking into a proud grin. "See, I always said your voice could make people's hearts taste better." His awkward metaphor made everyone laugh, breaking the tension of the surreal moment. Throughout her shift, Mai's phone buzzed constantly in her apron pocket. Local radio stations wanted interviews. Small venues asked about booking her for performances. Someone even translated her lyrics into Spanish, and a group of musicians in Mexico had covered the song with their own verses about their grandparents' journeys. The regulars at the diner were beside themselves with excitement. Mr. Chen from Table 6 proudly told everyone within earshot that he'd been listening to her sing for years. The college students who usually studied in the corner booth had set up a fan page, complete with a video compilation of all the times they'd secretly recorded her humming while serving coffee. "We hope you don't mind," one of them said sheepishly. "Your songs helped us through so many exam weeks. They're like a warm hug in musical form." Mama Rose watched it all with knowing eyes, occasionally wiping happy tears with her apron. During a quiet moment, she pulled Mai aside and showed her an old, creased photograph. It showed a younger Mama Rose standing on a small stage, microphone in hand. "I had dreams of singing too, once upon a time," she shared softly. "Life took me down a different path, and I don't regret it. This diner has been my stage in its own way. But seeing you, it's like watching a flower finally bloom after a long winter." By closing time, the video had reached over 1 million views. Music blogs were sharing it, calling it the authentic voice of a generation. A famous singer had shared it on her social media, praising the way it blended traditional melodies with modern storytelling. Mr. Wong called as Mai was hanging up her apron. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently. She could hear the smile in his voice. "It doesn't feel real," she admitted, looking around the quiet diner. The same chairs, the same checkered floor, the same coffee-stained menus. Everything looked the same, yet somehow different. The best kind of success, Mr. Wong said wisely, is the kind that doesn't change who you are, but reveals who you've always been. That night, Mai sat with her brother in their small apartment, reading through comments from around the world. People shared stories of their own grandmothers, their own struggles, their own dreams. A woman in Australia wrote about how the song made her call her family for the first time in years. A young girl in Chicago said it gave her courage to perform at her school talent show. "Your voice is building bridges," her brother observed, scrolling through the comments. "Just like grandmother's jade pendant, carrying stories across oceans." Mai touched the pendant, wondering what her grandmother would think of all this. The morning star peeped through their window, the same one she used to wish upon during those early morning walks to work. But now her wishes weren't just wishes anymore. They were becoming real, one view, one shared story at a time. As she finally drifted off to sleep, her phone still buzzing with notifications, May realized that her songs had become more than just her story. They had become a chorus of voices, each adding their own harmony to a melody that spoke of dreams, determination, and the unbreakable bonds of family and culture. The morning light painted the diner's windows gold as Maya tied her apron on one last time as a full-time waitress. Her notebook, once hidden beneath order pads, now sat proudly on the counter, filled with new songs born from the whirlwind of the past few weeks. The record label contract lay signed at home, promising studio time and proper distribution for her music. But this morning wasn't about future plans. It was about honoring the place and people who had been her first audience, her first supporters, her second family. The breakfast rush was different today. Regulars who'd been coming for years brought small gifts. Handwritten cards, flowers, even a hand-knitted scarf from the elderly lady who always ordered plain toast and chamomile tea. Mr. Chen arrived with his entire family, including his grandmother, who hugged Mai tightly and spoke rapidly in Mandarin about how proud she was. "Don't forget us when you're famous," joked Uncle Joe from the kitchen, but his eyes were suspiciously wet as he flipped pancakes. He'd already made her promise to record his secret recipe song, the one she'd made up years ago, to remember how he liked his grill prepared each morning. Between serving plates and refilling coffee cups, Mai found herself storing away every detail, every sensation. The warmth of the coffee pot, the squeak of her shoes on the checkered floor, the familiar ding of the kitchen bell. They were all part of the song her life had become. "You know," Mama Rose said during a quiet moment, "some people think success means leaving everything behind. But real success is about bringing your roots with you as you grow." She adjusted her reading glasses and smiled. "That's why we're so proud that you're keeping your Thursday night shift." It had been Mi's idea, to work one shift a week at the diner, no matter what happened with her music career. The record label thought it was great publicity, but for Mai, it was about something deeper. This place had shaped her songs, given her stories to tell, taught her that every life had a melody worth sharing. Her brother stopped by during his lunch break from medical school, bringing a surprise. He found an old video on their mother's phone, sent through a messaging app years ago. It showed a tiny Maya in their old kitchen, singing while their grandmother taught her to make dumplings. The same folk song that had now touched millions had once been just a private moment between generations. As the day went on, local news crews arrived, wanting to capture the waitress-turned-singer's last full-time shift. But what they found wasn't just a human interest story, it was a celebration of community. Regular customers shared stories about how May's quiet songs had brightened their worst days. The college students talked about how the diner had become their second home because of her welcoming presence. Mr. Wong came in for his usual green tea, this time bringing a small gift. A vintage microphone charm for her grandmother's jade pendant. "To remember that your voice was always meant to be heard," he said softly. even when you were just singing to an empty diner. Near closing time, May did something she'd never done before. She stood in the middle of the diner and sang without holding back. Her voice filled every corner of the space, carrying years of dreams, hard work, and love. She sang about coffee cups and midnight conversations, about keeping promises and chasing dreams, about finding family in unexpected places. The song ended with tears and applause, with hugs and promises to return. As Mai hung up her apron, she realized success wasn't about escaping her old life. It was about expanding it, about making room for both coffee refills and recording sessions, for both stage lights and diner fluorescents. That night, as she locked up the diner one last time as a full-timer, the street lights seemed to twinkle like stars. Her phone buzzed with messages about tomorrow's studio session, but for now, she just stood there, letting the moment sink in. Through the window, she could see her reflection overlapping with the diner's interior, the past and future existing in the same space, just like the traditional melodies and new lyrics in her songs. She touched her grandmother's pendant, now accompanied by the microphone charm, and smiled. Sometimes the biggest dreams come true not when we leave our old lives behind, but when we find a way to carry them forward into something new, something bigger than ourselves, something that feels like both an ending and a beginning.